Good morning, everybody. This is Satya here, and as mentioned before, I'll be taking the quick static general knowledge session for today. Hope everybody can hear my voice and see the screen. Okay, so I'll be taking you through few questions and also give you a little bit of context of the question where possible. In today's session, because it's a static thing, I will be putting up a PDF of these questions along with the answers on the app. So for my session of static GK, because these are just static GK questions, I will be putting up the PDF of the thing which is presented on the screen in the app. You can access it there, right? Usually that is not done for current affairs, but for static GK, at least my sessions, I will try to put up these questions. I usually put up the questions in the PDF. So this PDF will be available to you by the end of the day on the app. So right now you can focus on the questions and whatever extra information I give. If it is not written on the screen, if it is not present on the presentation, those things, if you want, you can note them down, right? You don't need to write down the questions on the screen. But in case you want to note any of these extra points that I'm talking about, then you are free to note them down, right? Obviously, the questions of the screen will be directly made available to you. Chalo. So today I'm going to take you through a few questions, important ones about the Indian freedom struggle, questions related to that. And I'm sure you have studied a lot of these things about the Indian freedom movement in history, in social sciences when at school. Some of these facts are directly from textbooks. Some of these facts may be associated with the material that you might have studied. So, more or less, you should know these things. If you don't, then this is a good opportunity for you to learn about them and also understand what type of questions from history can be asked in the exams. So, such similar topics you can always read up, right? So that it increases your depth and breadth of knowledge about the Indian freedom struggle. So, just a little bit of history. India sown chiria, right? And India was very famous for a lot of things, including the spices along the coastal regions, especially Kerala. And the spices were very famous in the Western countries. And when we talk about the West, today we mean the US, America. But in ancient times, the US did not even exist. So when we talk about ancient trade, when we talk about the West, usually it would include European countries, which would include the United Kingdom or Britain. Then other apart from the British, you also had the Portuguese, the Dutch, the French, the Spaniards. So people of these countries were also very famous for exploration. And in fact, the Britishers were almost among the last of the Europeans to come. Before them, we had a lot of other people, including the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the French, who came to India and established their colonies. In fact, one thing which was very common for a lot of these people is that they never came with the open stated intention of ruling over the country. That may have been their hidden motive, but a lot of these people actually came in the form of traders. Right? They came, they established their colonies to commit to have trade with India, to do business, to do commerce with India. And then, under the pretext of doing trade, they also started bringing in military power, saying that this is required for their own protection. So they started bringing in their military powers for protection of their traders, and slowly and steadily, they also started establishing their forts, and they slowly and steadily started annexing kingdoms. And before we even realized it, they started ruling over us, right? So what generally started as the need to just do commerce quickly established into colonial rule. And as we all very pretty much know, the English, the Britishers, they were the most successful among all of them and ruled for over us for over 200 years. But Indians realized that it does not do to be ruled by the others. So there were various means by which we fought. There was this group of violent people who believed that action is required to get independence. And then there was the rule of, then there was the set of people who believed in non-violence, who believed in satyagraha and the like, and believed that there can be non-violent methods by which independence can be sought. And the rest, as they say, is history, right? So we are thankful to all the people, whether we agree to their methods or not. But there were a lot many people who did lot many activities during the Indian freedom struggle during the era, the 1800s and the early 1900s, because of which India gained her independence from the British. So having said that, let us take a look at some of the important points in the form of questions. The very first question that I would like to ask is a very simple one. Now, in which year did the Indian sepoys first mutiny against the Britishers? And this is a very interesting piece of history. The name is also very famous, and the reason for this is also very famous. So if I give you the brief story behind it, during that time, a lot of Indians were recruited into the British army to work as British sepoys. And as luck would have it, they started using the fat of cows and pigs, right? They started using the fat from dead cows and pigs to create the cartridges. Cartridges basically like of bullets. And one way to use these cartridges was that you had to open it with your mouth. You had to tear open the cartridge with your teeth before you fed it into the rifle. The biggest problem here with these greased cartridges was that the beef which was used in that was actually bad, because Hindus consider cows to be sacred. We will not touch beef. And the Muslims, they considered pork or pig fat to be haram, right? Unclean, and they will not touch that. So using beef and pork, basically using animal grease, was bad both for the Hindus and Muslims. And Mangal Pandey, a strict Brahmin, was one who was among the first to realize that this was being done. And whether other things work or not, religion often is a great motivator. So good or bad, religion often serves as the catalyst for a lot of things. And because the religious sentiments of people got hurt, biggest mistake maybe what the Britishers did, the sepoys, they rose up in mutiny. So led by Mangal Pandey, it was the year 1857 in which the first sepoy mutiny rose against the Britishers. Right? There's an Amir Khan movie by the name Mangal Pandey, in which, of course, a lot of dramatization takes place and they show these events. But it does help us understand a dramatic version of the events which actually took place. So 1857 was the year of the Sepoy Mutiny, where Mangal Pandey and other Indian sepoys in the British Army rose against the masters. Why? Because the religious sentiments of both the Hindus and the Muslims were hurt in this. Right? Okay, Rishit, again, if I open up public chat, answers will be given, and that is not what I want others to do. So other than me talking and you listening, I don't think there is any point of any public chat in this particular session. Anyway, the Grand Old Party, the name Grand Old Party often is given to some of the oldest political parties of any country. And in India, if any party deserves the title of being the Grand Old Party, it is the Indian National Congress. Today, of course, the Indian National Congress is a very pale version of what it used to be, right? It is, of course, overshadowed by many other national level parties, and slowly and steadily, many people fear that it no longer has the hold over the country that it originally did. But whether we accept it or not, it was the Indian National Congress, which was one of the major political parties in existence at the time of the freedom struggle. And many stalwarts who are responsible for leading the Indian freedom fight were from the Indian National Congress or belong to this party. So obviously the question is, who founded the Indian National Congress? It was in the year 1885. And Anmol, Kamraj and others were much later. They came into existence much later. It wasn't Kamal, right? It was Kamraj. Kamraj and others, leaders from South. But they were not the founders of the Indian National Congress. The Indian National Congress, right, along with Dadabhai Naoroji and others, was actually founded by a British civil servant by the name of A.O. Hume, A. Octavius Hume. So the founder of the Indian National Congress and the party which actually was responsible for giving us most of the leaders who fought for the freedom of Indians from the Britishers. Ironically, it was a British man, a British civil servant, in fact, by the name of Alan Octavius Hume, who was responsible for the creation of the Indian National Congress, right? ना ये भाई साहब पार्टी फॉर्म करते और ना ही लोग लड़ते. So Alan Octavian Hume, or A.O. Hume, was the founder of the Indian National Congress. Now, when India, when the Britishers first came to India, they came under the guise of businessmen and traders. So, what was the name of the company? Before we answer this question, what was the name of the company which was established, which did a lot of trade with India? Right? It was the East India Company. Right? Do you know currently who is the owner of the East India Company? Currently, who is the owner of the East India Company? And government of India? No, it's not the government of India. And surprisingly, it is not the crown. So the East India Company was actually disbanded around the mid 1800s. The East India Company no longer remained in existence around the 1800s. But around 2000, in fact, around 2010, a Gujarati businessman, a Gujarati businessman, basically born in Gujarat but now in Britain, by the name of Sanjeev Patel or Sanjeev Mehta, right? He consolidated a lot of different companies having the name East India in them, and he tried to call this as a revival of the East India Company. So ironically, again, it is now a Indian-born person, a Gujubhai, called Sanjeev Mehta, who is currently the owner of the East India Company. This obviously is not the original East India Company, because that was disbanded around mid 1800s, but he claims to have tried to revive this. So why I talked about East India Company, because after the East India Company established itself, slowly and steadily, the crown, or basically the British royal family, they said, okay, too much of work is going on in India, now we'll officially rule over India. So the crown took over, and when the British royalty, they took over and started officially ruling over India, they appointed a lot of people, and these people were the governor generals and the viceroys. So they appointed a lot of officials, governor generals, viceroys, to look after different provinces. So among them, we have various, you would have heard of Lord Macaulay, Lord William Bentinck, Lord Hardinge, and so on and so forth. So among all these things, which viceroy announced the partition of Bengal in the year 1905? As you know, Bengal itself was one huge province. It got split into what was East Bengal and West Bengal. And after the partition, after Indian independence, East Bengal was East Pakistan, and after the Bangladesh war, it became Bangladesh, right? So Bengal, originally part of Akhand Bharat, got partitioned into West Bengal and East Bengal. After partition, East Bengal became a part of Pakistan, so that was East Pakistan, and then Bangladesh itself became an independent country. So this partition of Bengal in the year 1905 was done by Lord Curzon, right? So Lord Curzon. So where Bihar and Jharkhand, so if you take a look at the entire Indian map, Jharkhand was never a part before 2000. In fact, Jharkhand was not even in existence as an independent state when India got its independence. Surprisingly, Jharkhand, Uttarakhand, Uttaranchal, a lot of these places actually became states decades after Indian independence. Before that, there were major provinces. So if you take a look at current states like Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they were all a part of Madras province. Just like there was no independent state of Gujarat, right? What today is Gujarat and Maharashtra was earlier the province of Bombay. So yes, the entire Indian map actually, it was created by 500 and odd princely states, right? India itself was never one country with what we currently see as 20, 29, and 30 states and union territories. There were 500 plus individual provinces. So when the Britishers came, they grouped some places as the province of Bombay, or called Calcutta or Madras, for administrative purposes, right? So today what we see as West Bengal was not what they would have referred to as Bengal, right? Geographically speaking, Bengal would have been a much larger place than what we look at it right now. So the viceroy who announced the partition of Bengal in 1905 was Lord Curzon. Of course, there was a lot of opposition to it, including Mahatma Gandhi, and a lot of important people gave up their title in protest of this fact, and so on and so forth. So, among the major events which led to a rise of resentment in the minds of the Indian people against the Britishers, one of the major events was, of course, the partition of Bengal. Okay, so the next question. Just like you had the Indian National Congress as one of the major parties, one of the major religion-based parties was the Muslim League. And the Muslim League initially was a very powerful party, and although religion-based, it had a major role to play again in our independence struggle. Of course, during the end, it gave rise to a lot of nationalism, feelings of religion, because of which certain unfortunate events took place. But initially, the Muslim League also came up as a group of patriots whose main aim was not necessarily the propagation of religion, but to fight for the independence of the country. So the point is, in 1906, at what place was the Muslim League found? And the location is Dhaka. Today, what is in Bangladesh? Dhaka, obviously the capital of Bangladesh currently. But at that point of time, Dhaka was not in a separate country. Dhaka was in very much what was Bengal in India. Today, of course, Dhaka is the capital of Bangladesh, a separate country of its own, which I just mentioned. But in 1906, the Muslim League was found in Dhaka. And it makes sense because Bangladesh itself is a Muslim country. So obviously Dhaka, one of those places where there was a heavy concentration of people of the Islamic religion. Right? So now Teeth, how to remember that? See, the important point is not remembering the dates. So I have not given you the date as the question. Right? I have not given you the date as the question. I mentioned 1906 is the year of the foundation. The important place is the place where it was found, the person who founded it. Of course, if you can remember these dates, fine. Right? Like the partition of Bengal, it is very important to remember that. So similarly, it's very important to remember what happened, where it happened. But as to which year, more or less, if you are able to remember it, fine. Okay, so it was founded in 1906, and there were multiple founders. Some of them included, of course, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Other than Muhammad Ali Jinnah, some of the people who were considered to be the founders include people like Khwaja Salimullah, someone called Waqar ul Mulk, then Aga Khan III, Hakim Ajmal Khan. These were some of the people who were considered as the founding fathers. Right? Because an institution is not generally founded by just one person. But among them, the most important one, of course, is also the person responsible for the founding of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Right? Yes, so there are multiple people who would be considered as the founder of the Muslim League. In fact, many of them would say it was actually Nawab Khwaja Salimullah who was considered to be the founder, but the presiding leader at that time would have been Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Nawab Khwaja Salimullah, these are among the people who are considered to be the founders. Right? So the Muslim League. And then later what was established as the All India Muslim League. Right? All India Muslim League. So Muslim League, All India Muslim League, a lot of these people. Correct. Iqbal, Liaquat Ali Khan, pretty much. Okay. The next one. During the fight for Indian independence, it was not just for the independence of India that organizations were found. In fact, a lot of people realize that if a country has to become independent, it does not just mean fighting against the invaders, fighting against the outsiders, but there's a lot of social reform which needs to be done. It's not just that you fight for independence and then continue whatever is happening. Many a times it is necessary for the society to reform itself. If the society itself brings about a lot of awareness among themselves about the rights of people, about certain bad practices which are to be eliminated, then with an enlightened society, independence also becomes easy to achieve. So a lot of people founded different missions, right? Things like the Ramakrishna Mission, which was founded in 1896. And the purpose of this was not necessarily to fight for the independence, but basically for humanitarian relief, for social work. So when we talk about humanitarian missions, right, we talk about a lot of different, like we had the Brahmo Samaj, we had the Prarthana Samaj, We had the Ramakrishna Mission. So all these things were basically humanitarian organizations, some of them based on fundamentals of religion as well. So, who was the founder of the Ramakrishna Mission? Surprisingly, this person is also supposedly the person after whom the current Prime Minister of India is named. The person about the current Prime Minister of India, Narendra Damodar Das Modi, he supposedly named after Narendranath, who became famous in the world, especially after his speech at the World Religious Conference at Chicago, and that is Swami Vivekanand. So the question is, why is the organization founded by Swami Vivekanand known as the Ramakrishna Mission? So who is Ramakrishna? So Swami Vivekanand had a guru by the name of Ramakrishna Paramhans, right? They're from Calcutta. They were believers in the divine goddess, right, Devi Ma. So Swami Vivekanand was a disciple of Ramakrishna Paramhans, who was a Devi Bhakt. So in honor of his guru Ramakrishna Paramhans, the organization for humanitarian work founded by Swami Vivekanand was the Ramakrishna Mission, right? So, and I hope you also know Swami Vivekanand was became very famous internationally for his speech at the World Religious Conference in Chicago, where he famously started with the speech addressing people as brothers and sisters, right? Now, difficult to remember the dates. See, if you can remember the date, fine. If you can't remember the date, there is no trick to remembering it. They are literally numbers, right? I wish I could have given you a formula saying that 3 multiplied by 3 is 3 square, which is 9. But for numbers, other than repeatedly doing it again and again, there is no. For some tricks, for example, I can tell you how to remember the year in which Jeffrey Bezos of Amazon was born. Literally these days there is a reel going on about Jeffrey Bezos born in 1964. So that is when you can remember it. That if there is a song or something, you can remember it. But for most of these days, there is absolutely no trick. Some of them will be easy to remember. Some of them you will have to just mug. And unfortunately, although exams are not supposed to ask them, this year CLAT stupidly did ask dates. So right now I can't even say don't remember them. You will have to. Chalo. So moving on. The next question. There are different types of how a country can be run or a society can be run. Famous ones, of course, being democracy, right? Or dictatorship or socialism. One way of running a country is communism. And Russia and China are supposedly the countries where communism is still prevalent to a large extent. Some of the important Russians who lent a lot towards communism and different forms of socialism include names like Karl Marx, Lenin, Stalin, and so forth. In India also, the two states where communism still has a hold are the states of West Bengal and Kerala. So even in India, we cannot say we don't have communism. If you take a look at the states of state West Bengal and Kerala, communist parties still have a lot of sway there. So the point is, in India, who was the person who was the pioneer of communism? So in India, the pioneer of communism was supposedly M.N. Roy or Mahendranath Roy, as Anmol is pointing it out, right? So the pioneer of communism in India was M.N. Roy or Mahendranath Roy. Of course, there were a lot of other people who were founding different parties like the Communist Party of India, CPI. Today, even you have CPI or CPIM, which is a CPI with Marxism. So these were all, there are different forms of communism, but the basic concept of communism was brought to India by Mahendranath Roy. Now, what is Marxism? Marxism is basically the type of communism as propounded by Karl Marx, right? Karl Marx, a very famous Russian leader, and he had very specific views on what communism is supposed to be. So we have Marxism, which is basically people who follow the teachings of Karl Marx, or we have Leninism, where Lenin, the teachings of Lenin are considered to be the base, right? Or Mao Zedong or Maoism. So based on the way these people interpreted their particular ideology, we call it Marxism or Leninism and so on and so forth, right? Karl Marx, German, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, sorry. Lenin, Stalin, all those Russians. Karl Marx, German. Let me check that. Yeah, German philosopher, but very famous for his beliefs of communism. But yes, Karl Marx, sorry, German philosopher and economist. He was a German philosopher, yes. So Marxism, it's basically Karl Marx's views on various things, right? Yes, Marx is German. Difference between, see, they are all versions. You don't have to understand big difference. It's like asking what is the difference between, I don't know, Hinduism and Jainism. Jainism is a form of Hinduism, right? So they're not very different. Jainism was born of Hinduism, just like Sikhism, Buddhism. A lot of these things are offshoots of Hinduism, and although they have a very distinct identity now, they do have a very distinct identity now, but basically they are not very different. They are born as offshoots, very specific forms of this. So that's what it is. Chalo. So moving ahead, next one. So the Chittagong Armory raid, right? Chittagong obviously is a place in India, and just like there are many incidents which are famous in India during our freedom struggle, like Mangal Pandey, it is called the uprising, 1857 uprising. There was the incident at a place called Chauri Chaura, where a police chowki was burnt with people inside it. So just like that, armory is a place where weapons are stored. So a very famous incident was when revolutionaries attacked the Chittagong Armory. They raided basically this place called the Chittagong Armory. An armory is a place where weapons are stored. So in history, the Chittagong Armory raid is one of the incidents. The question is, who was the person responsible? Who was the brain, the person who planned the Chittagong Armory raid? And there's a famous movie. There's a famous movie behind it, and that is Surya Sen, right? So Chittagong Armory raid पे एक बड़ी famous movie भी बनी है, but the person responsible behind the Chittagong Armory raid is Surya Sen. Okay. She was saying they don't eat onion, garlic, and potato. You're talking about Jains. So Shiv, it is not just Jains who don't onion, garlic, and potatoes, right? Potatoes थोड़ा extreme है, but not eating onion and garlic is also there among Swaminarayanis. In fact, even a lot of South Indian Hindus, for example, my own grandparents, they never ate onion and garlic. So not eating onion and garlic is not something only done in Jainism. Of course, they have included anything underground, but not eating onion and garlic is not exclusive to Jainism. There's a lot of Hinduism which talks about it. Even today, a lot of people who follow Hinduism will not eat onion and garlic on religious days. So it's not something which is exclusive to Jainism. Jains have taken it a level beyond. They say we will never eat it. But not eating onion and garlic is not exclusive to them. Okay, the Kakori train conspiracy, basically there was a plan to loot the Kakori train, right? Basically there was a train going from one place to another, and the plan was that this train will be looted. So if you watch any movie involving either Chandrasekhar Azad or Bhagat Singh, right, the Kakori train conspiracy is something for which these names are associated with. So Chandrasekhar Azad, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Rajguru, these people are usually these are some of the names associated with many things, one of them being the Kakori train conspiracy. It was basically the revolutionaries, they wanted to stop the train and loot it so that they could get arms and money and all that. Okay, yes. And which movie? I'll have to search for the movie. I think the movie's name is Chittagong. So the movie on Chittagong Armory raid. Okay, the movie's name is Khele Hum Ji Jaan Se. This is 2010 movie starring Abhishek Bachchan actually. And the name of the movie, it's actually an Ashutosh Gowarikar movie, and this movie's the name is Khele Hum Ji Jaan Se. Right? So the movie based on the Chittagong Armory raid, it's an Abhishek Bachchan movie, Khele Hum Ji Jaan Se. Okay. So Abhinav Bharat Society, founded in 1904. Abhinav Bharat Society, and this was a revolutionary organization. So, revolutionary organization, what it means to say is these are people who would not believe in non-violence. So, anything revolutionary, it usually is an indicator that these people who are, if anything is described as being revolutionary, it is not necessarily that they are non-violent. It's quite possible that they believe in action, direct action. So, the Abhinav Bharat Society was actually founded by somebody who is considered to be an idol by people who believe in action. Of course, he was not accepted. I mean, even today, he's not accepted by a certain party because of his revolutionary moves. They believe him to be antithetical, an anathema to what they believe in. So the point is, the revolutionary organization was founded by Vinayak Damodar Savarkar or V. Savarkar. Today, after especially the current ruling party has been in force, Veer Savarkar is now being praised and being lauded on many public fora. Before the current party was in government, many people believed Savarkar did not get his due because he was not what the Congress party ideals were during the pre-independence era, right? He was not exactly a person who believed in the ideas that the Congress did. But Veer Damodar Savarkar is definitely considered among one of the revolutionaries. Whether you like what he did or not, his actions were significant during that era, right? Why is founded written? See, so found is if I lost my pen and I got it, I found my pen. Here, found does not mean something was lost and found. Founded is established, and that's why the word founded is used. There's a difference between the meaning of the word found and founded. So if the organization was lost and somebody found it, they say this organization was found. But here I'm not saying that it was lost and somebody found it. This organization was established by the person. So that's why we don't say found. We say it is founded by something. That's the linguistic difference between the word found and founded. You get that? The difference between found and founded. Yeah. So linguistically, we are supposed to say founded when we mean to say established something. Okay. Now, epithets or nicknames, very famous. For example, Mahatma or Bapu is the nickname associated with Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. And many people do know who gave the title Mahatma, but surprisingly, not many people seem to be able to identify of how Mahatma Gandhi or Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi came to be known as Bapu. Anyway, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was known as Mahatma. Rabindranath Tagore was known as, what was Rabindranath Tagore known as? Correct. Rabindranath Tagore was famously called Gurudev. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, right? Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, what is he known as? Pandit ji is fine, but currently Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru is now known as Chacha Nehru. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. So, if I ask you the question, who is known as, in history, who is known as Iron Man? In history, who is known as Iron Man? The correct answer is Bismarck, not Sardar Patel. Sardar Patel was never known as the Iron Man. Sardar Patel was known as the Iron Man of India. You have to be very particular about it. In history, and no, definitely not Tony Stark. So, if the question asks who was in history who was known as Iron Man, the answer correct is actually Otto von Bismarck. But if the question is who was known as the Iron Man of India, the Iron Man of India was the title given to Vallabhbhai Patel. He was also known as the Sardar. So Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was known as the Iron Man of India. So just like that, the title Frontier Gandhi, the frontier provinces, right? Up north, especially towards Afghanistan, when all of that was a part of India, those were known as the frontier provinces. So the person who was popularly known as the Frontier Gandhi was Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan was known as the Frontier Gandhi. Belonged to the northern region, the frontier provinces. Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan. Okay. Now, the next question is, I already used the term presidencies, right? Regions which were established. So when, of course, the famous presidencies, we had Bombay, we had Madras, we had Calcutta, basically port cities. Sorry, some other question is there. Before we go to presidencies. Now the question here is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, and he was of 19th century and a social reformer, right? I did talk about a lot of these organizations, like how Ramakrishna Mission was established by Vivekanand, Swami Vivekanand. So similarly, one of the famous social reformers was Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. And which social cause was he the most famous? Of course, he fought for a lot many things, right? He fought for a lot many things, but among them, the most famous one is for widow remarriage. Kathy, these notes will be provided in the app. Anything extra which I say, which I have not written on the screen, if you want, you can write. But whatever is there on the screen, the PDF you will get. Bismarck, by the name it seems German. Khushi. Bismarck, Otto von Bismarck, the name seems to be German. You can cross check that. But the Iron Man was Bismarck. The name suggests that it is German. Okay. Pioneer for changes, yeah, there were a lot many. Raja Raman Rai was one of them. So Dayanand Saraswati, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Raman Rai, Swami Vivekanand, a lot of these people were actually pioneers. So Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, the particular social cause for which he was most famous is widow remarriage, right? A lot of people under the British rule started feeling that widows cannot remarry. Surprisingly, Indian society, which was very progressive during the ancient times, it regressed a lot. And during the British rule, there are a lot of things a lot of evils crept into the Indian society. One of them being the outcasting of widows, right, and them not being allowed to remarry. So Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, he fought for the rights of widows for remarriage. Okay. For or against? So he fought for widow. Obviously, if he's a social reformer, he won't be against widow remarriage, because widow remarriage is something which is required, which is good. Not allowing widows to remarry is bad. So obviously, he fought for allowing widow remarriages. I know, Rishit. So in recent times, when people destroy the statues of such great people, all we can say is that it is sad. If we don't learn from history, or rather we are if we tend to insult people who have done such great things in the past, then society is definitely heading towards its doom, right? We have to learn these things. We have to accept mistakes that we did, but we also have to learn the good things which people have done. Anyway, moving ahead, the question which I was talking about, presidencies, right? So the famous ports were like cities along the coast of India. So even today, the major cities, we talk about Chennai, which was Madras, Kolkata, which was Calcutta, Mumbai, which was Bombay, they still are places which are major. Reason being, most of them are port cities. So when Britishers came, they established their places and called them presidencies. So the first presidency was which one? So the first presidency officially which they established was Surat. Right? Apdu Surat. Aля Surat. આપણા સુરતમાં છે ને, આપણા સુરતમાં ફર્સ્ટ પ્રેસિડેન્સી એસ્ટાબ્લિશ થયું છે. So Surat supposedly was the first place where presidency was. No, Shrut, it's not Rangilu Surat. As far as I know, Rangila is the title for Rajkot. Rajkot is the place which is given the title of being Rangilo. Rangilo Rajkot, I think, because I've been to Rajkot. I think Rajkot is called Rangila Rajkot. For Surat, they say Kashinu, Surat nu Jaman and Kashinu Maran. Right? There's a famous saying that what is famous? Surat nu Jaman. The food of Surat and death in Kashi. These are supposed to be great things. Anyway. Chalo. And the captain of the first ship which arrived in India, Anmol, wasn't it Vasco da Gama? Of course, not a Britisher, Portuguese. But the first ship which came to India, ultimately it is Vasco da Gama who is credited with discovering the sea route to India, right? He landed at Calicut, Zamorin. You're talking about business. Then it would be for British. Vasco da Gama also was for business and stuff. And Hastings was years after that. So Hastings would have been the first from the British or something like that. It can't be just the first person. Anyway, which Indian mass movement began with the famous Dandi March of Mahatma Gandhi? Now, the point is, before we go to the movement, where exactly did the Dandi March start? At which location did the Dandi March start? So Dandi March started right here in Ahmedabad, right near Sabarmati. It started right here in Ahmedabad. In fact, if you go near, have you heard of the Dadhichi Bridge? It's, of course, everything is on the riverfront. The Dadhichi Pull, if you go, that so there in Dadhichi Bridge, there is a small, very when you cross that, just near Sabarmati Ashram. In fact, just before you go towards that Sabarmati Ashram, there is a very small sign and there's a barricade there. Technically, that is called the Dandi Pull, and that was the location where the Dandi March started. At that time, salt, one of the most basic commodities, salt, was taxed by the Britishers. Right? These Britishers, साले अपनी माँ को तक ना छोड़ें, tax कर दे. They decided that even salt, which is considered to be a staple for living, will be taxed. So they said, ये तो हद हो गई यार. कल तो तुम बोलोगे कि ऑक्सीजन पे भी tax डालो. So then they said enough is enough. They marched from Sabarmati to Dandi. Dandi, I think it is somewhere near Surat or Vapi, right? So I think some 200-300 odd kilometers from here. So Gandhiji, he started the march, the Satyagraha from Sabarmati to the beach at Dandi, where at the beach they went, he picked up a handful of salty water, basically because salt is created in the salt pans near there. So with that, he said, Namak ka kaida tod diya, namak bana ke bech diya. So symbolically, he said, I'm not going to pay any tax. We are going to make our own salt. And and of course, 2-3 गालियाँ मेरे मुंह से निकलेंगे. I don't know whether Gandhiji used those cuss words, but we can make it spicy and say that he just literally showed a middle finger to them. And after the Dandi March, when he symbolically broke, it started the civil disobedience movement, where we said, we are not going to be violent. We are not going to fight. We are not going to take arms. But we are not going to do anything that you want us to do. We are going to be peaceful, but we are not going to follow your laws. To hell with your laws. This is a civil disobedience movement. So the mass movement which started after the Dandi March was the civil disobedience movement. Correct? So civil disobedience, non-cooperation, all of them at roughly the same time. So you get that? So non-cooperation in 1920-22 was actually first unsuccessfully attempted by Gandhi, where he wanted to induce the British government to grant self-government. And it was the first attempt at a large-scale civil disobedience, Satyagraha. Right? But it was in 1930, March 12, 1930 to be specific, that he started the march, and that successfully started civil disobedience. So the entire civil disobedience movement started in March 12th, 1930. So it is known as the civil disobedience, right? Okay. Chalo. Moving ahead. Now, a little bit of dates. 4 acts. The Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, basically against the Rowlatt Act. The civil disobedience movement. The boycott of the Simon Commission. And the Quit India movement. You just have to arrange them in chronological order, according to order of time. So, when did this Rowlatt Act Satyagraha happen? When did the civil disobedience movement happen? When did the boycott of the Simon Commission happen? And technically, when did Quit India movement start? If you know the years, very good. But even if not, at least you should know in what order they happened. So, right, in order of analogy, the Rowlatt Act is the year 1919. Right, I'll put up these dates on the screen. I'll write these dates on the screen if you want to note them down. The Rowlatt Act was technically 18th of March 1919. Right, so that was the first incident among the four which have been given. The Rowlatt Act was in the year 1919. Now, after that, the event which took place was the boycott of the Simon Commission. So the boycott of the Simon Commission, basically we are talking about the year 1927. Simon Commission. Then if I talk about the civil disobedience movement, we just saw that, right? Starting with the Dandi March in March 1930. And Quit India movement, of course, there's a famous movie, 1942, A Love Story. So this year is easy to remember. The Quit India movement happened in the year 1940. So it was the Rowlatt Act Satyagraha, followed by the Simon Commission, followed by the civil disobedience movement, followed by the Quit India movement. So 1, 3, 2, 4 is the sequence that we are looking for, right? It was the Rowlatt Act Satyagraha of 1919, followed by the Simon Commission 1927, followed by the civil disobedience movement 1930, and the final push of Quit India movement in 1942. Right? The sequence in which they took place. Okay. Next one. Coming to the next one. Naujawan Bharat Sabha. Naujawan Bharat Sabha. Now, was the non-cooperation movement done against the Rowlatt Act? What was the non-cooperation movement? So you have to understand, non-cooperation basically was done multiple times. First time non-cooperation movement, Gandhiji attempted it in around 1920, if I'm not mistaken, right? And non-cooperation movement basically was that Britishers were not in large numbers, right? Britishers, the most surprising thing is, it was not purely in their own hand to rule this country. So they expected Indians to help them to rule India, right? So Mahatma Gandhi said, Indians will not cooperate with the British government, and our main aim is that we want you to grant us self-governance. And this basically started around 1920, right? If you take a look at the non-cooperation movement, that was in 1920. And the Simon Commission Boycott Act was 1927. So the non-cooperation movement, its seeds were sown even before the boycott of the Simon Commission took place. Correct? And of course, the incident at Chauri Chaura, Gandhi, what happened in Chauri Chaura? There was a police station, British sepoys and others, and the mob went violent and they burnt it down. And because of that, Gandhiji said, okay, I've been talking about Satyagraha, I've been talking about non-violence, but yet if you are going to indulge in this, then this is not going to work. And he said, okay, no more non-cooperation movement. So yes, the Chauri Chaura incident led to him suspending it. But non-cooperation movement technically was not only for the Simon movement. In fact, it happened a lot after that. Okay? I hope you got that. Chalo. Anyway, the Naujawan Bharat Sabha, which is basically for revolution against British Raj by gathering workers and youth. So here we have got some very good clues. One, they have said, this is to foster a revolution. So we are not talking about somebody who's peaceful, somebody who's revolutionary. And Naujawan. So which person, a young person who believed in revolutionary ways to fight. Today, when we talk about the youth who fought in the Indian freedom struggle, the first name which comes is the legendary Sardar Bhagat Singh, right? So Sardar Bhagat Singh was the person who started the association Naujawan Bharat Sabha. and basically it was to take action against the British Raj. And for this, the members were supposedly from the worker community, from the peasants, the youngsters in the workers and the peasant communities were all to be recruited as part of the Naujawan Bharat Sabha, which basically was a revolutionary organization to fight against the British. Again, there have been so many classical movies made on the life of Bhagat Singh and the ultimate sacrifice, right? In fact, there are three people whose names are always taken together when they talk about sacrifice. These three people were hung together. Most prominent one, of course, Bhagat Singh. Who are the other two? Who are the other two people who were along with Bhagat Singh hung till death? So, Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru, right? Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru were the three people who were hung together, and the date on which they hung was 24th of March 1931, right? On Valentine's Day, 14 February, you will get all these WhatsApp forwards कि इसको शहीद दिवस की तरह याद करो. But no, that's a fake one. Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev and Rajguru, records say that they were hanged, they were ordered, they were ordered to be hanged on 24th March, right? The order of them to be hung till death was of 24th March 1931. The schedule, of course, the schedule was moved forward by 11 hours and they were hung at the evening of 23rd March. The official death was supposed to be on 24th March, but at the last movement, it was moved forward. So, and on the evening of 23rd March, they were hung. The official date was supposed to be 24th March, but fearing violence, it happened on 21st. So, it was in the year 1931, right? Order was for 24th. Actual was on 23rd. Did you get this? Okay. The Naujawan Bharat Sabha year of founding, I don't think will be very relevant. But let me, guys, very honestly speaking, even I'm Googling some of these dates, right? I think you guys can also do that. But Naujawan Bharat Sabha, let's see what Google has to say. So Google, it says, this was formed in the year 1926. The Naujawan Bharat Sabha was founded in the year 1926. Anyway, moving ahead. Next one. So, New India and Commonwealth. Again, Commonwealth is the name because even I was under the impression that it is Commonwealth. Maybe this is a typing mistake. But when I cross-checked, I found out that every reference does spell it as Commonwealth, not Commonwealth. So I'm pretty sure, but that's why I put SIC. It means that is how it is usually reported. So New India and Commonwealth, these are newspapers started by whom? New India and Commonwealth. And I've cross-checked it. Commonwealth, it's not Commonwealth, it's Commonwealth. So New India and Commonwealth, these are newspapers started by Annie Besant. Right? A very famous female name associated with the Indian independence struggle. So New India and Commonwealth are both newspapers started by Annie Besant. Shiv, Gandhiji, I think, was associated with Hind Swaraj and those papers. If memory serves me right, I think Hind Swaraj and those papers were associated with Gandhiji. For New India and Commonwealth, it is Annie Besant. Anyway, quickly moving on to the next one. Now, Hindus have traditionally followed a lot of laws as written in the Manusmriti, right? The Code of Manu. And for Muslims also, their customary laws have been handed out through a lot of religious scriptures and stuff. The Britishers always wanted to write down everything. They wanted to create a written code for everything. Biggest irony being, till today, the British don't have a written constitution of their own. खुद का कुछ नहीं होगा, but दूसरों के इसमें टांग अड़ाते रहेंगे. So when the Britishers came to India, they wanted to codify the Hindu and Muslim customary laws, right? Laws in India, we did not have a written law per se. We used to follow things according to custom. So which governor general, during the time of which governor general did they attempt to codify or rather write down, document Hindu and Muslim customary laws? So this is just something which we have to know by name, right? Among all the buggers, it was Warren Hastings. When Lord Warren Hastings was the Governor General, they made an attempt to codify, put into writing, document Hindu and Muslim customary laws, create uniformity in it. Right? Codified law basically means creating a documented uniform version of this. Okay. Now, can you tell me who was the British Governor General of India when India got its independence? Who was the British Governor General of India when India got its independence? No, Teerth, listen to my question carefully. Who was the British Governor General? Guys, those who are giving me Chakravarti Rajagopalachari as the answer. नाम से समझ में आता है भाई साहब हिंदू इंडियन है. Listen to the question carefully, guys. Who was the British Governor General when India was given independence? So the British Governor General when India got its independence was Lord Mountbatten. Lord Mountbatten. Sorry, Viceroy. I am mistaken, not Governor General. During the type of independence, we did not have that. Right? Viceroy? No, it was Governor General. Anyway, the person, Viceroy or Governor General, the last Britisher who was in charge at that time was, no, it was Governor General because Rajagopalachari also became the Governor General. Anyway, whether it was Viceroy or Governor General, nomenclature is different, but the last Britisher who was in charge of things, let me put it like that, was Lord Mountbatten. And of course, the first and last Governor, Indian Governor General, the first and last Indian Governor General was of course Chakravarti Rajagopalachari, also known as C. Rajaji. Right? Anyway, the Governor General during whose tenure an attempt was made for the first time to codify the Hindu and Muslim customary laws was of course Warren Hastings. Chalo, moving ahead. Quick question next. The only session of the Indian National Congress which was presided by Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was the chairperson, so to say, president of that, person who is in charge of it, right? Because later Mahatma Gandhi was very, very disillusioned by the political parties and he refused to be member of political parties. He said, fine, I'll fight for independence and all that, but nothing to do with political parties and stuff. So if you take a look at a lot of these political parties and their things, then it was the other people who were prominent members who used to lead it. Mahatma Gandhi technically presided only one session of the Indian National Congress. Question, where was this session held? So this was at Belgaum. Right? It's on the border of Maharashtra and Karnataka if I'm not mistaken. If my geography is correct, I'm not very sure. But I think Belgaum is somewhere on the Maharashtra-Karnataka border if memory serves me right. Anyway, so the only session of the Indian National Congress over which Mahatma Gandhi himself presided was the one at Belgaum. So yes, it's on the border region, and there's even today, if I'm not mistaken, there's a lot of contention of whether Belgaum should belong to Karnataka or should it go over to Maharashtra. I think there's still a lot of dispute, and a lot of people believe that Belgaum should be included in Maharashtra, but I think Belgaum is Karnataka technically speaking. Anyway, moving on. And of course, guys, dates and other things you can always use Google Data to confirm. Now, Home Rule Movement, right? Very specifically, Home Rule Movement. Who are the founders of this Swaraj, so to say? Home Rule Movement. Majority getting it right. Rishit, no, it was not Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. In fact, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi is very infamous for saying that we will fight for dominion status. Right? Lot of Congress people of INC at that time, they said that first we will ask for dominion status और वो अगर हमको भीख में मिल जाए तो फिर हम happy हो जाएंगे nappy में. But then a lot of revolutionaries said कि nothing doing, it's either total independence or total independence. कोई option ही नहीं है. It's only after a lot of revolutionaries said that we want complete independence that the Congressies accepted ठीक है यार, let's fight for complete independence and stuff like that. Anyway, all that is irrelevant. The point is the Home Rule Movement was started by two. One is Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and of course comes again Annie Besant. Right? So Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Annie Besant were the people responsible for the Home Rule movement. Can you tell me what was the nickname by which Bal Gangadhar Tilak became famous? Bal Gangadhar Tilak was famous as what? Correct. No. Lal, Bal and Pal, of course. Lal, Bal and Pal is the trio. But if Punjab Kesari was not. Punjab Kesari was Lala Lajpat Rai. Kushi, Punjab Kesari was Lala Lajpat Rai. Punjab naam hi Punjab hai. Bal Gangadhar Tilak was Maharashtrian. Right? Bal Gangadhar Tilak's the individual nickname by which he was famous was Lokmanya. लोग जिसको मानते हैं, लोगों में जो पॉपुलर है, लोग जिसको मानते हैं. So Lokmanya, लोगों द्वारा माना गया बांदा. So Lokmanya was the name by which he was famous. And of course, one of his most famous quotes, Swarajya is my birthright and I shall have it. So the name by which Bal Gangadhar Tilak became famous is Lokmanya. Right? Very famously he said that Swarajya is my birthright and I shall have it. So what exactly is this? It is nothing but the movement which is, obviously independence movement. हम rule करेंगे. This was around mid 1910, 1920, so around 1916, 1918 के आसपास कुछ था ये. And basically they wanted to gather all the educated upper class people, so to say, for they're fighting for this home rule. As it in home rule, people of the home should rule it. That's it, right? Okay. Lok Nayak, if I'm not mistaken, is Lok Manya is Bal Gangadhar. Lok Nayak, again Google दे, ऑप्शन होगा तो मेरे को नाम याद आ जाएगा. लोक नायक, was it J से कुछ नाम है if I'm not mistaken. Let's see what. Jayaprakash Narayan. Lok Nayak is Jayaprakash Narayan. Sorry, yes. Lok Nayak is Jayaprakash Narayan. Carry this around 1 o'clock तक, 1.5 घंटा तो मिनिमम होता ही है अपना. Let's see. 1 o'clock तो मिनिमम. ठीक है जी. Sure. Yes, and surprise, and yes. So the festivities like the Ganesh Utsav. Today we observe Ganesh Chaturthi, where we have public installation of the idol, and it lasts for so many days. Surprisingly, this doesn't come from history, right? It was actually Bal Gangadhar Tilak who started public celebrations of Ganesh Chaturthi. Before Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Ganesh Chaturthi was not publicly celebrated the way it is today. Like I said, religion is a very, very strong motivator. So to create feelings of unity among people, to create the feeling of community, he started these public celebrations. So today what we see as public celebration of Ganesh Chaturthi, surprisingly, it doesn't go back too far in history. It is hardly a few decades old. And it was Lok Gangadhar Tilak who revived that culture. Right? So Ganpati, Shivaji birthday, all of these things, a lot of these Marathi community festivals, Lokmanya Tilak revived these things so that the community comes together to celebrate it. And of course, when community comes together under the head of religion to celebrate something, feelings of community, feelings of local pride, all that comes up. So it develops good things for that. Okay, moving ahead. What was the name of the first newspaper to announce the partition of Bengal in 1905, July 6, 1905? The first newspaper which said partition of Bengal is happening. We have already seen what was this, right? Divided into East Bengal and West Bengal. I think कौन था? Curzon भाई साहब थे? Curzon भाई साहब, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So couple of people have got the right answer. Couple of them are no, okay. Majority is getting it right. So the paper, this was a gentleman by the name of K.K. Mitra, right? K.K. Mitra, obviously Bengali. So a gentleman by the name of K.K. Mitra, and the name of the paper was Sanjeevani, of course, as the Bengalis would pronounce it Shanjibani, right? The Bengalis would obviously call it Shanjibani because there's no V sound in Bengali. So in Hindi, what you call Sanjeevani, obviously Bengalis, they would call it Shanjibani. So that was the name of the publication. That was the first newspaper to announce that Bengal got partition, right? Shanjibani. So Sanjeevani, or as the Bengalis would say, Shanjibani was the first newspaper in which publication of partition of Bengal took place. Krishna Kumar Mitra. Yeah, okay. Chalo. Moving on. Next one. The Indian Independence Committee. Indian Independence Committee. Obviously, group of people coming together to decide how to fight for Indian independence from the British. In which country was this formed? One wants to know what is my mother tongue. Ha! Keep guessing, keep guessing. So, in which country was the Indian Independence Committee formed during British? And Shruth, Madrasi is no mother tongue. There is no language called Madrasi. In which country was the Indian Independence Committee formed? So the country is Germany, Deutschland, right? The a lot of people who are not in India, away from India. So a lot of people actually went to UK. They learned, in fact, lawyers who went to the UK for the bar, a lot of lawyers who studied in London, England, they were involved. Similarly, a lot of people were there in Germany. Even Japan, for that matter, had a lot of people. Although we don't hear many stories of people of the independence movement. But Germany was definitely a place where a lot of Indians were there. And these people, away from land, away from home, far away from home, hashtag far away from home. So these people often used to plan about what shall we do to free the country. So Germany was the country where the Indian Independence Committee was formed. Okay, chalo. Which year? Google.com. Even I'm going to Google it. I don't remember. I'm the worst person to remember numbers, dates, unless it is something very, very extraordinary, like 1942 for Quit India movement or 1930-31 for the Dandi March and so on. I would hardly remember dates. Anyway, moving ahead. Next one. Who is called the father of nationalism? Father of the nation, nahi? Father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. Right? Although technically nobody officially gave him that title, but among the common janta, father of the nation, Mahatma Gandhi. But father of nationalism in India. Nationalism is basically feeling of pride for your country. So surprisingly, the person who is known as the father of nationalism in India was the social reformer Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Social reformer Raja Ram Mohan Roy was known as the father of nationalism in India. The feeling of country, the feeling of having pride for one's own country, right? Today, of course, uber nationalism is taking over, where people, they go above and beyond limits to prove that we are famous. And if you are not a nationalist, then you are a traitor of the country and all that bakwas, right? So people take nationalism to extreme levels these days, which is sad. But the true sense of nationalism, that you want to do something for your country, you believe in your country. So the person considered to be the father of nationalism in India was Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Google is showing Surinath Banerjee. Again, Google will show multiple things. So you need to check, not direct Google results, but get into the sources and check. So whether it is Raja Ram Mohan Roy or Surendranath Banerjee, check. Anyway, moving ahead. Who was the head of the arbitral tribunal set up at the time of India's independence? Now, what exactly is the arbitral tribunal? So, when India got partitioned, right? When India got partitioned, there was a lot of disagreement about how this partition to take place, right? The concept of the partition, the substance of this partition, and how exactly this should. So, there was a lot of disagreement, right? And especially a lot of judges were there who are disagreeing on how this entire process should take place. So the arbitral tribunal was basically a committee which was set up for resolving the issues. So arbitral committee was set up for Indian judges who disagreed over how the partition of India should take place. So who was the head of this arbitral tribunal? And the answer is William Patrick Spence. William Patrick Spence was the person who was the head of the arbitral tribunal. Basically, the committee set up for looking into the matters where the judges disagreed about how the partition of India should take place. Now, some very interesting. Do you know the person who was responsible for actually physically dividing India never went to those places? When he came to India, he was hit by all different type of diseases. So he was locked up in a room. and just using a map and a pen, he literally cut India into two pieces. And that's why, if you take a look at the international border, a lot of it is very arbitrarily done. In fact, there are places when the line literally runs through houses and fields. Because technically speaking, when you divide countries, you are supposed to do it along geographical features. You are supposed to do along geographical lines, right? So if there is a mountain, you use that as a border, or sometimes you use a river as a border, right? Or you use a forest line as a border. That would make sense. But I think Cyril Radcliffe. So when the bugger came to India, I think पेट में कुछ गड़बड़ हो गया भाई साहब का. So he never physically went to these places. He just had a map. And map पे आपको कौन सा पता चलेगा क्या चीज़ कहाँ पे है? So he brutally drew those lines and the partition of India took place. Do you know why 15th of August 1947 was the day of Indian independence? 15th August 1947. Why did India get independence on 15th of August 1947? So the point is, Lord Mountbatten, right, at that point of time, of course, a lot of discussions were going on, and pretty much it was decided that India should get its independence from the Britishers. But the Britishers had not decided a date. The Britishers were not sure what date. They still were contemplating at what date should we give it. A reporter, he once was interviewing Mountbatten around that period of time, and he just asked, okay, sir, do you have a date in mind on what date is India going to get its independence? And egoistic Lord Mountbatten never knew how to say no or I don't know, right? कुछ लोग होते हैं ना, उनको दिखाना होता है we know everything. So this bugger did not want to say I don't know, or we are uncertain, or we are not sure. So the first important date which came to his mind was his day of victory. I think it was the surrender of Japan at Burma or something, right? So this was the surrender of Japan at Burma or something, which happened on 15th of August. So the first date which came to his mind was this date. So he just said 15th of August 1947. And I think Salman Khan took inspiration from Lord Mountbatten कि एक बार हमने commitment कर दी तो फिर मैं खुद की भी नहीं सुनता. So once Lord Mountbatten just announced that 15th of August 1947 is going to be the date, people just considered it to be the official date and everything was hurried. If Indians were asked on what date would you like your independence to take place, 15th August would never have been selected by many Indians, because Indians, whether we like it or not, many Indians believe in astrology. And 15th of August was a Friday. And astrologically speaking, right, those who believe in Rashi and all that, many Indians who believe in it will never have selected because it was not supposed to be a Shubh Din. So if Indians were asked what day would you have got independence, people who believe in Rashi and stuff like that would never have selected 15th August. Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know, we were never asked. So Lord Mountbatten just randomly said 15th August, and so 15th August 1947 became our date of independence, right? Chalo. 26th January was the announcement of the Purna Swaraj thing at Lahore session, and that's why Republic Day is that. Khushi? Yeah. Chalo. Anyway, a lot of history there. Coming up, who was the first non-Congress Chief Minister of India? Right? Of course, Indian National Congress, one of the most major parties. So obviously, in the initial days, every member more or less was from the Congress. So for a very long time, it was Congress which led most of the places as Chief Minister. So among all of them, which Chief Minister was the first one who was not a member of the Congress? So the first non-Congress Chief Minister, and this person served as the Chief Minister of Kerala in 1957-1959. He was against Chief Minister 1967-69. And this was of the Indian Republic, right? So he was a member of the Communist Party, and he served as the first Chief Minister of Kerala, and also the first non-Congress Chief Minister of the Indian Republic. And this was Ilamkulam Manakkal Shankaran Namboodiripad. You don't have to remember the name. It is EMS Namboodiripad. So EMS Namboodiripad, right? EMS, if anybody is interested, is Ilamkulam Manakkal Shankaran Namboodiripad. Please don't even try to pronounce it. It's just EMS. So EMS Namboodiripad of Kerala, he belonged to the Communist Party of India, CPI, was the first non-Congress Chief Minister of India. Morarji Desai, non-Congress Prime Minister. Yeah, that would be Prime Minister. Yeah, Narasimha Rao was the president of India. Sorry, Prime Minister. Sorry, sir. Prime Minister of India. Narasimha Rao was the Prime Minister of India. And was he not from Congress? Narasimha Rao, I don't think was non-Congress. If I'm not mistaken, PV Narasimha Rao was a member of. In fact, he's very famous because on his death, the Congress party did not pay respect or something. So PV Narasimha Rao technically belonged to the Indian National Congress. Yeah. He was member of the Congress. PV Narasimha Rao was Congress. Okay. So EMS Namadripad. Oh, please, nobody is going to ask you the full form of this name. Please don't make me repeat that. It is Elamkulam Manakkal Shankaran Namboodiripad. उनके खुद के घर वाले भी उसको EMS ही बुलाते थे. So it's just EMS Namboodiripad. चलो. So this was Kerala. Okay. Next one. Which person famously said the Rowlatt Act is preventive murder? The Rowlatt Act is preventive murder. So basically, what was the Rowlatt Act? Right? I think around 1919, the Rowlatt Act passed. Among the Rowlatt Act, it allowed in certain political cases, you without a jury, you can intern suspects without even a trial, without a jury, without a trial. Basically, you could catch people and put them in jail. No need for a jury, no need for a trial. So Rowlatt Act, it allowed certain political cases to be tried without a jury. It allowed detention of suspects without a trial. So Rowlatt Act, technically it was called the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919. Right? The official name is the Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1919. It became famous as the Rowlatt Act. So basically, this act gave power to the police to arrest any person without a reason. Without any reason, you can just go and arrest a person. This was the power which the Rowlatt Act gave to the police. So it was also known as the Black Act. Which person said the Rowlatt Act is a preventive murder? It was Edwin Samuel Montague. Edwin Samuel Montague. Montague or Montague, however you pronounce it. Edwin Samuel Montague, he was basically a British politician, right? And he was Secretary of State for India between 1917 and 1922. So basically a British politician himself said that the act of the British, it is preventive murder. To prevent something from happening, you are murdering somebody. Montague, again, names, okay, without the E, I guess. Montague, whatever. Anyway, so Rowlatt Act is preventive murder was said by Edwin Samuel Montague. I think that's the spelling. Okay. Why was this? Yes, this was the Black Act. This was called the Black Act. Sedition is something different. Sedition, of course, is also something extreme where if you are suspected of inciting public for violence against the government established by law, the sedition is that. Sedition is when you are arrested because you have incited the people to overthrow the government with violence. Rowlatt Act was much more darker than that. In Rowlatt Act, you don't even need to have an excuse. Police can just arrest you. Sedition में कम से कम कुछ तो excuse चाहिए होता है. And even that is now being fiercely contested. Rowlatt Act was darker than that. Montague Chelmsford reforms, yes. Montague Chelmsford reforms. Hey Bhagwan, just like Indian names, even some of these foreign names are difficult to pronounce. And British name तो फिर भी ठीक है. God help me if it is a Frenchman or a Spaniard. Anyway. So Rowlatt Act preventive murder was basically Edward Samuel Montague. Okay. Which city saw the first instance of Satyagraha? Peaceful protest. So we know who was the person responsible for peaceful protests, right? Bapu. So not the person, city. So if it is now first city. Okay. So do you know for what this is? Why? क्या दिख रहा है? So the first instance of satyagraha in India was Champaran, and CH alag se hai, Amparan alag se hai. So basically this was the indigo farmers movement, if I was right. Yeah, so the indigo farmers, indigo basically neil jisko bolte hain, used as a dye, right? So the indigo farmers, they if I'm not mistaken, that was the Champaran satyagraha, and Champaran is somewhere central to north side of India. So the first instance of satyagraha basically was the Champaran satyagraha, Champaran, Bihar, correct? Okay. So to do something for the indigo planters, who persuaded Mahatma Gandhi to come to Champaran? So on the same topic, which person is, now this is not very important, but no, it was Sardar Patel the baad mein, but the person obviously would have been somebody from that region, right? So the person who is given the credit of being the person who actually persuaded Mahatma Gandhi to come was Rajkumar Shukla. Rajkumar Shukla ji. Indigo planters, of course, general class, but specifically it was Rajkumar Shukla. This one, okay. I wouldn't say very, very important, but theek hai. Anyway, moving ahead. New Lamps for Old was written by whom? New Lamps for Old. So basically, these are articles criticizing policies of the Indian National Congress, right? Indian National Congress was not always loved by everybody, right? There were many people who were critical about their policies. So New Lamps for Old is basically a set of articles which criticize the policies of the Indian National Congress. And this was written by Aurobindo Ghosh. Aurobindo Ghosh. New Lamps for Old is basically a set of articles which is critical about the policies of the Indian National Congress. This was written by Aurobindo Ghosh. Okay. Economic nationalism. Right? Economic nationalism. So who is thought of as the pioneer? Pioneer basically is the person who starts. So economic nationalism. Who is considered to be the pioneer? Basically, what is economic nationalism? Economic nationalism is basically that thought which says that it is the state which should control rather than other market mechanisms, right? So policies may domestic control of the economy, labor, capital. So the state or basically the government should control a lot of these things. That is what is meant by economic nationalism. So when you talk about economic nationalism, who is considered to be the person who was the pioneer of economic nationalism? So R.C. Dutt. Yes, Rameshchandra Dutt. R.C. Dutt or Rameshchandra Dutt was considered to be the pioneer of economic nationalism in India. Who was R.C. Dutt by the name, but at least by what is being suggested, I would guess some sort of nationalist economist, right? And Bengali, so obviously a civil servant. So basically an Indian civil servant, economic historian, writer, intellectual person. So Rameshchandra Dutt was an Indian civil servant. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, there are also versions of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata which have been translated by him. I don't know whether it's the same R.C. Dutt, but R.C. Dutt is also famous for translation of the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. And he would have been before even Gandhi, Dadabhai Nauroji in those times, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Next one. After independence, right? When we became independence, obviously we would not have had time or even the thought that we should have our own coins. It's only after a few years that we would have thought कि चलो यार अपना भी सिक्का बनाते हैं. So in our distinct coin nowadays, if you take a look at the Indian coins, we can easily identify that these are coins from India, right? So in before that we used whatever was going on from during the British rule. So in what year did India bring about its distinctive coins? And this is the post-independence era. So in which year, from which year rather, did we bring our distinctive coins? This was the year 1950, same year as we started our republic, right? We adopted the constitution was adopted and brought into force in this year. And again, this was the year when we started our own distinctive coins. Okay. Few more questions. Let's quickly do a few more questions. Again, just years. The Liaquat Nehru Pact was signed in which year? So the Liaquat Nehru Pact was signed in the year 1950. What was the Liaquat Nehru Pact? So basically, India split in the year 1947, right? Partition happened and India got split into India and Pakistan. So at that type of time, a lot of refugees they came, a lot of Indians, a lot of Hindus and Sikhs who were stuck in Pakistan. They wanted to come over India. A lot of Muslims from India wanted to go to Pakistan. So a lot of these shifting happened, right? So when refugees were there, lot of them would not have been able to carry their property and stuff, and a lot of problems would have happened because they just overnight fled from their original country. So basically the Liaquat Nehru Pact was a bilateral two-sided treaty basically between India and Pakistan, where refugees were allowed to return to dispose their property, right? Supposing you were original in Pakistan, after the partition you came to India as a refugee. So under this treaty, you are allowed to go back to Pakistan to dispose of your property, right? So a lot of abducted women were there, women were kidnapped, a lot of property was looted, a lot of religious conversions were done. So for all these things to set these things, correct, the Liaquat Nehru Pact was signed. Liaquat, of course, of Pakistan, Nehru at the time Prime Minister of India. So a pact was signed between these two gentlemen, basically between the two countries headed by these gentlemen. So this was a trial to set right the wrongs which happened during the partition, correct? So the Liaquat Nehru Pact was the year 1950. Okay. Now, the Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan of 1988, right? The Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan of 1988. What is it about? Whether we like it or not, Rajiv Gandhi, a young leader, and politics में young का definition अलग होता है. So he was one of the young leaders supposed of that time. And of course, whether we like it or not, there was a lot of changes which happened during his time. But the point is, in the year 1988, the Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan was for what? So it was for nuclear disarmament. Rajiv Gandhi was assassinated by a human bomb called Dhanu, who belonged to the LTTE. So LTTE is a separatist group, a terrorist group down south in Sri Lanka. It has links in down south, Tamil Nadu and Sri Lanka, where there are separatists fighting for the creation of a separate state, Tamil state. So, and because Rajiv Gandhi had sent across Indian troops to Sri Lanka to fight against the LTTE, there was a lot of resentment against him. So when he was in a place called Sri Perumbudur, he was visiting a place called Sri Perumbudur, a human bomb by the name of Dhanu, she actually went to the meeting and exploded, right? Boom. And he died in that year. So, but before that, Rajiv Gandhi Action Plan in 1988 was basically for nuclear disarmament. Okay. Next one. An uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. Who said this? An uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. Who's famous for this quote? An uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. How can we remember all this, Anmol? You keep on revising it, right? How do we remember in which movie Katrina Kaif and Amitabh Bachchan and Gulshan Grover were together? Rishit, seriously don't know that? Anybody here? Katrina Kaif, Gulshan Grover and Amitabh Bachchan. Which movie? Nobody knows it. Okay, Katrina Kaif's first movie. Pranam knows it. Which was Katrina Kaif's first movie? The movie was... Somebody is asking me who is Gulshan Grover. मर जाओ. या तो मैं इतना बुढ़ा हो गया या तुम इतने छोटे. You guys have no idea who Gulshan Grover is. Bad man. No, literally that is his title. Bad man. So today's homework, find out, ask your parents who Gulshan Grover is. One of the super villains of at least हमारे ज़माने का super villain. Anyway, the movie, this was Katrina Kaif's first movie. Gulshan Grover, Katrina Kaif and Amitabh Bachchan. The movie was boom. The movie was boom. Anyway, so how do I remember that? So I didn't sit and mug, right? So, okay, forget that. Hrithik Roshan's first movie. कम से कम उतना तो पता होगा. ऋतिक Roshan's first movie. वो भी नहीं पता, मर जाओ. ऋतिक रोशन्स फर्स्ट मूवी, गाइस कहो ना प्यार है, इतना तो पता होना नहीं. वरुण धवन की फर्स्ट मूवी. चलो लेट मी कम टू दिस जनरेशन. वरुण धवन की फर्स्ट मूवी. वरुण धवन की फर्स्ट मूवी तो पता होगी. स्टूडेंट ऑफ द ईयर. लिटरली जो मेरे लिए करंट अफेयर्स था वो तुम लोगों के लिए एंशिएंट हिस्ट्री है. शीश. एनीवे, द पॉइंट इज, how do I remember, how does anybody remember these things? It's just you keep on discussing these things, talking about these things, reading these things, and it sticks in your mind. बैठ के रट्टा नहीं मारने का होता है. But you read a lot of history, you read a lot of these things, you just go through your notes again and again, you will remember it. Right? Anyway, so an uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. Most often than not, कोई कोट समझ में ना आवे और लगता है कोई इंडियन है, 50% chance the quote is by Mahatma Gandhi. In this case, this is actually the case. So, educated guess. An uncontrolled pen serves but to destroy. Negative marking ना हो and सारे options Indian हो and सारे freedom fighters related हो, तो Mahatma Gandhi can be a good guess. But there is no logic behind it. तुक्का ही है. But in this case, literally, it was Mahatma Gandhi who said that. Anmol is asking, should we remember first movies of good actors? Absolutely not. Just the first movies, first silent movie, first Indian movie, first color movie, those are relevant. Ranbir Kapoor का पहला movie, nobody cares, including Ranbir Kapoor. Anyway, moving ahead. One last question before we call it a day. Right? So this, I'm giving you options. Oops, that's all folks. नहीं, एक question तो बनता है. अरे किधर गया बे? किधर गया? Just a moment. Aja. Okay, last question. Which among the following was the apex court of India during the British era? Apex means highest. Like right now we have the Supreme Court, which is considered to be the highest. So during the British era, what was considered to be the highest court? Was it the Federal Court? Was it the Presidency Supreme Court? Or was it the Privy Council? During the British era, which was considered to be the apex court? Was it the Federal Court? Was it the Presidency Supreme Court? Or was it the Privy Council? And the answer, it is the Privy Council. The Privy Council was considered to be the apex court, the highest. Right now in India, we call it the Supreme Court. We have the Supreme Court, which is the highest judiciary body. During the British era, the highest body, the highest court was considered to be the Privy Council. Literature, literally, apex literally means highest. The apex court, highest court. I'm using it in that context. The apex court literally means the highest court, the Privy Council. ठीक है? So that's it. Was Gulshan Grover the person who appeared in Hera Fairy as the kidnapper? Yes, you're right. Finally, somebody who identified who Gulshan Grover was. By the way, technically, Gulshan Grover is also famous for acting in a lot of foreign movies, right? One of the most prolific actors in Hollywood. Before a lot of people went to Hollywood, Gulshan Grover was actually one of the first Indian actors to go and act in Hollywood movies. Anyway, you can look out for who Gulshan. You may not know his name, but you might have seen his face somewhere. Anyway, so that's it, guys. Done for the day. Yes, Gulshan Grover is the one called Batman. Okay, what was your question, Vansh? What was your question? I skipped. I did not. Missed it. What was your question? If you can ask that. My mother tongue. No, Kannada is not my mother tongue. Kannada is definitely not my mother tongue. Shruth got it. Rishit, no, that is not my mother tongue. Anmol, no. Siddhant, yes. Rishit, yes. Lavanya, yes. Vansh, no. Krish, yes. Kushi, yes. Shiv, correct. Riya, correct. Anmol, correct. Vansh, no. That is my adopted mother tongue, but that is not my actual mother tongue. Drishti, no. Bengali? No. Although I can talk in it. So Vansh, my mother tongue is the one which is considered to be one of the oldest languages in the world. Of course, the people speaking my language fight it with our neighbors. Both of us have a fight that which one. We consider our language to be the oldest one. Sanskrit, no, Sanskrit is not the oldest language. No, it's not. Dravidian is Tamil. Dravidian is one of the roots. So, my mother tongue is Tamil. ને રિયાબેનને લાગે છે કે હું ગુજરાતીમાં વાત કરું છું તો એક્સેન્ટ સંભળાતું નથી. એમને લાગે હું ચોખ્ખી ગુજરાતીમાં વાત કરું. Dear, I have been in Gujarat longer than you have been alive on this planet. I literally have lived for more than double the time that you have been alive on this planet. So obviously my Gujarati is supposed to be good. In fact, the strangest thing is I can read and write in Gujarati. I can't read and write my own mother tongue. I can only speak in Tamil. I can't read and write Tamil. By the way, Tamil is my mother tongue. I can't read and write Tamil. I can only speak the language. Whereas in Gujarati, I can also read and write. So obviously my Gujarati is supposed to be better than my Tamil. એટલે આ શ્રુત કહે છે કે મેહોણી સાંભળવું હોય તો મેહોણી ઇઝ નોટ પ્યોર ગુજરાતી. મેહોણી ઇઝ એન એક્સન્ટ. મેહોણા. મેહોણા. So Gujarati has a lot of different dialects. If you go to Kathiawad, the Gujarati that you get to hear in Kathiawad is very different. The Gujarati that you will get to hear in Surat, Sorthi is very different. The Gujarati that you get to hear in Ankleshwar side is different. The Gujarati that you get to hear in Rajkot, different. So these are all different dialects of Gujarati. Gujarati by itself is not a singular language. Right? Anyway, we are done for the day, guys. Any doubts or questions, you can hang around. Else, tata, bye-bye, see you. Of course, assignments and stuff I'll assign on the app.